Welcome again. This is our webinar for today talking about diabetes and essential labs. So great to see some people who've been with us for a while and some new faces. Always, as usual, our goal is to provide amazing information, and sometimes we need to hear something again and again to make sure it's all clear for us. We're always interested in hearing your feedback and questions, so please make sure to put your questions in the chat and let us know where you are coming from today. And so we're going to talk about diabetes and essential labs. And if you've heard this before, this is a reminder. If this is new to you, then certainly please put questions in the chat as to anything that comes to your mind. The goal is to remind everyone who has been listening to this for a while, and to have anyone who's listening to this for the first time to really reflect on what are the regular labs we need to be doing, because it is so common. We see participants coming into our program all the time who have not been diagnosed, but we do the labs and they really had diabetes 3 or 4 years ago. So part of the goal is really understanding what you should be doing as a regular monitoring check every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, in order to make sure that that you can be doing it well. So we'll talk about why it's so important to keep on a regular schedule. Things can happen really really quickly, and things can change very fast. So for anyone that doesn't know, I am John Vargasetti, here, director at of programs, diabetes programs here at D4 Diabetes Solutions, one of the original co-founders, as well as many of the other team members who've been with us for a long time, and I'll share in a minute that whole process. And so, as usual, a disclaimer that this is only for informational purposes only. And don't stop or start your medications without consulting your doctor. One second. So as usual, please post your questions in the Q&A box. Diabetes and essential labs, what you don't know can hurt you, is part of the goal. If you don't know what's happening and you have your head stuck in the sand, then there may be things happening in your body that are not good and you just don't know about them. So just a minute for anyone who's new with E4 Diabetes Solutions, our journey. And as usual, our main vision and our goal is for you to be in the path of optimum. So in other words, our goal is not just standard of care. The standard healthcare system is all about standard of care, in fact, maybe minimum care. Our goal is for everyone to be optimum. And recently we've been talking about the Healthy Centenarian Club, right? So it's about making sure that we can all healthfully age well and be well into our age. And E4 has been founded from the beginning for a vision where everyone can be treated ethically, we can all be healthy, and we can all satisfy our needs on a daily basis, which we can't do if we're not independent, if we don't have our health, right? It's impossible for us to really live our regular daily lives if we're dependent on someone else. And so part of that is taking in the principles of health, ethics, spirituality, and sustainability, and they all together come together in this whole journey of being in good health. And so part of the fundamental question is, what do you really want to do with your life? Like, what is it that you envision in that Healthy Centenarian Club when you reach 100? What do you want to look back at your life and saying, hey, I was able to visit these 20 countries. I was able to help my grandkids. I was able to learn these new languages. I was able to give back to other causes in my life because I had time during those last 30 years to do really a whole new life of volunteering. So whatever it is that you have in your mind and your vision of what you want to be able to be doing, part of the goal is to have a vision, have a goal, because if we just live life like robots without any particular goal or vision then becomes pointless and monotonous, and then we don't really have a reason to focus on our health or a reason to live because we don't have that purpose. So if you don't have a clear purpose, one of the most important things to be healthy is to find a purpose, because if we don't have a purpose, then we don't really have a reason to do the effort to become and stay healthy. It's like, well, I might as well just enjoy life, and I'll eat whatever I want so I can die happy. And we'll talk about that. It doesn't really work out that way. But we have, sometimes people have that thought that, you know, I'll just live life today and not worry about the future. But part of the goal is really focusing on the future through a three-part approach. You know, everyone is different. From the beginning, we've always been talking about how we have a very personalized approach. Every person is unique, and different strategies work for different people. So, you know, as an example, sometimes pasta works for some people in terms of a food, and for other people it doesn't. Maybe some people need to be on a very low carb diet, and they can't tolerate even some healthy carbs. Other people might be fine eating a wide range of carbohydrates. So it really becomes very individual, and that's part of why I'm talking about the labs, because the labs help you be focused on what really is important for you. We have proven treatments that really reduce and reverse diabetes, and we have an expert team that keeps supporting you along the whole journey. And how we see ourselves as being different than many of the other programs out there is there's a lot of coaching and a lot of programs that are one-on-one coaching, but they don't really have a foundation of technology behind them in order to really do the measurements, do the labs, do the results, and compare how you are in your journey different than other people. It's not really personalized in terms of the data, right? So part of it is knowing the data that really helps us help you, and for you to help yourself. And there's a lot of technology out there that just tracks your data, and you know, there's all these kind of trackers and Fitbits and Apple Watches and all kinds of gadgets that track, but they don't really have that insight into your personal health, and they don't have that feedback with the one-on-one coaches. So combining the two is where we have our unique style of program, where we combine technology and we combine one-on-one support with our expert team and with coaches. So both, the combination is really what makes it excellent. And we've been doing this since 2015, and we started way before COVID, and have a great team that still supports you on the journey. So let's talk about why diabetes can remain undiagnosed for years. And one of the shocking, really, statistics from the International Diabetes Federation is that 50% of people out in the world today have some kind of diabetes. 50% of the people who have diabetes don't even know they have it. So half the people who have diabetes don't know that they have it. And part of it is because they're not doing even some very basic labs. Part of it is because the health system currently really only focuses on some labs, which we'll talk about, which are insufficient really to properly detect diabetes. So that's why we'll talk about the more advanced labs. And so one of the key risk factors is that even in the US, you know, one out of 4 people are undiagnosed diabetes, and 30% of the people in the US actually have prediabetes, and they're not aware that they have prediabetes either. So it is a very, very big challenge that most of the people don't really realize the challenge that they currently are facing, because they haven't been doing these labs. So one of the critical challenges is that the lack of early warning signs is common. You might not know you have serious diabetes for many, many years, for 10 years, 15 years. We've had people come into the program with an A1C in the 12s, like in this really stage 9, and they, for the first time, found out that they were so serious they had no idea. So unless you're doing regular checks, one of the unfortunate challenges of diabetes is it can change very quickly over the course of 6 months, over the course of a year. It can change very quickly, and if you are already on the prediabetes journey, it can go to diabetes within 3 months, within 6 months. So if you wait a year to check, then you might be much more serious than you think. So for example, if you're focused on being in the prediabetes range and you're still there like every year, then you don't need to check as frequently because you're in this more stage 1, stage 2, very optimum range. And the probability that it goes from stage 1 to stage 7 quickly is fairly low. But if you're already in the prediabetes range above 5.7 or in the advanced prediabetes range, kind of in anything in the 6 range in the A1C, it can change dramatically within 3 or 4 months. And I'll talk a little more ahead of time as to why it changes. But it can change quickly. It can change within 3 to 6 months. And so one of the reasons that we recommend regular monitoring is because it's important for that to be something that you don't find out by accident, that all of a sudden your diabetes, your A1C is 12 when 3 months ago it was 6. And we have seen cases where that has happened. So it's important to be on a regular checkup basis. Once you get into kind of this stage 3, stage 4 range, that's where at least every 6 months, if not every 3 months, it would be very useful to at least do your A1C and make sure that you don't have any surprises. So how do you detect diabetes? The first is the A1C, and that's very much standard in many of the yearly physicals, but it is still surprisingly not universal. There's so many people that have a yearly physical and they do not get their A1C checked. So if you've been doing this, please tell your friends, tell your family, ask your doctor to do the A1C. And if you, for whatever reason, are on this call and you haven't been doing the A1C at least every year, insist that your doctor do the A1C. And what happens is the doctors usually don't do the A1C until the blood glucose is above 100. So what can happen is they first check in a standard of care. Like I said, it's almost the minimal care. But in the standard of care in the US health system, the doctors typically first monitor the glucose. So they'll do a fasting glucose check in a standard physical. And once it rises above 100, then they start to be a little bit concerned. And sometimes they run the A1C, sometimes they don't. We've had definitely participants in our program that had a blood glucose of 100, 110 and never had an A1C done. So that's why it's very possible for many people not to have an A1C done. But no matter what your blood glucose is, even if it's 60, you should still have an A1C done, because it is very common for the glucose in the fasting to be low, but the A1C to still be high. It is very, very common. We have seen that a lot. And most doctors don't have that on their radar. So again, like sometimes it is said, buyer beware, patient beware, or health advocate beware. Be your own health advocate. Don't let the standard insurance rules decide what tests you get. Every single health insurance plan will pay for an A1C if you request it. It's absolutely covered by insurance at least once a year in your yearly physical. You have to ask your doctor to do it if they haven't done it yet. And so what happens is, again, the A1C is many times not done until your glucose is high, but it is very common to have, for example, a glucose of the 90s, but your A1C could be 6, because the A1C is really a long-term average. And the reason that can happen is because if your morning numbers are low, but your during the day numbers are high, then that glucose morning test will not catch the severity of the problem, and an A1C will catch it. And then for any of you who've already been doing the A1C and you know what it is and you've been doing it regularly, then the main goal, if you have a high A1C in terms of monitoring diabetes and improving your health, is to get that A1C below 7. And pretty much universally across all the health systems, all the studies have shown that the number one goal in terms of reducing heart risk, reducing risk of strokes, reducing risks of complications of the kidney, reducing complications of neuropathy, like all those complications start to happen above 7 in this deep red zone here where it says increased heart risk, kidney failure, blindness, and mutation. It's this area 6 through 10 is where the bigger challenges with diabetes happen. So if for whatever reason your A1C is currently above 7, the main goal is to work towards getting it below 7. And for that, sometimes medicines from your doctor are part of that plan. We're not against medicines where it's appropriate. And if you need a medicine temporarily to bring it down until you get your lifestyle organized, then maybe you need it. But the goal is to get it below 7. Although there's a caveat there, which is that if you are taking insulin, then you need to be on a different plan. In other words, once you are in the situation of needing insulin, then the goal is no longer to get it below 7 at any costs, because if you inject too much insulin to bring it down below 7, that has its own series of complications. So there's really two scenarios. If you are someone who is not using insulin, then yes, the main goal is get it below 7, even if you need to use some prescription medicines to do it, like as a holdover until you get your lifestyle worked out. And if you are in the scenario of needing insulin dependent, either long-term or short-acting or a combination, then your scenario is a little bit different. You still want to get it below 7, but there's a limit to the total insulin that was appropriate. And we can probably cover that in a whole separate webinar, but just be aware that there's two separate cases. There's the case of you're not using insulin or you are using insulin. For people who are not using insulin, lowering the A1C below 7 is priority number 1, and that is absolutely one of the main goals. If you are a person who is using insulin, then it's a whole different situation, and probably best to more individually talk about it, because it's everyone who needs insulin is more of a unique case in terms of why they need it, how much they're using, other medicines you're on. It becomes a much more complex scenario. Just be aware that it's not as simple as if you're on insulin, use as much insulin as required to get it below 7. And many doctors assume that, but that is actually not what the science shows. There's actually been some studies from the Cleveland Clinic showing that too much insulin is actually more detrimental than having a high A1C. So in other words, if you had an A1C, let's say of 10, and you used, I don't know, just to make up a number, 100 units of insulin to bring it down below 7, people had worse outcomes than people who stayed at A1C of 9 with a lower insulin level. So once you get into insulin, things change completely, and the management becomes much, much more complex. And it's something that really you need to talk with your doctor and talk with an expert about how to manage that properly. And then lowering the A1C once you get below 7, again, maybe priority number 2, because again, there's the case of people who are on insulin. You don't want to bring it down too low with too much insulin. You really want to do the lifestyle approach, which is part of what we're talking about in our program, is helping you reduce your A1C without medicine. And if you're already on medicine, to reduce the amount of medicine you need to get your A1C lower. So that is our philosophy and our goal. And that's what we're about, is helping you reduce your A1C without medicine. So the other scenario is that you might have a low A1C, but still have diabetes. So this is the other case of undiagnosed diabetes. The other case of undiagnosed diabetes is really you have a low A1C. So let's just say, someone has an A1C of 6.3, but you do a glucose tolerance test, and all of a sudden you realize that you actually do have diabetes with the glucose tolerance test. So 73% of people who just had the A1C missed being fully diagnosed with diabetes with the A1C. So in other words, the amount of misdiagnosis is really mind-boggling, because let me just jump back here. We have 50% of people don't know they have diabetes because they're not even doing the A1C test. People aren't doing the A1C test, so don't even know they have prediabetes. And then people who have the A1C, of the people who are doing the A1C, many people looks good, the A1C looks good, but in reality, their health is not that good. And that's where the glucose tolerance test, which is one of the key tests that we've been recommending since we started. And Dr. Yumberg, who's one of the leaders in the program, has been recommending for more than 30 years. So this is not new. This is science that's been known for a very long time. But shockingly, our current health system does not pay for glucose tolerance, does not support glucose tolerance. Doctors don't even talk about glucose tolerance. So what's happening is, 73% of people that have a much more serious case of diabetes don't really know that's the case, because they look at their A1C and they say, and the doctor says, hey, you're good. And they think, hey, I'm good, but they're really not. And so, that's what I said. You can stick your head in the sand and think you're good, and maybe that's what you want to do. But if you really want to know what your current state is, then at least once to start, we would recommend a glucose tolerance test. If you pass it with flying colors, then you can really say you're good. If it turns out that you're not, then better that you know that you're not, then you go around thinking you are when you're not, because what can happen is kidney disease takes 5 to 10 years to develop. Neuropathy takes 5 to 10 years to develop. You think you're good for 5 years, for 10 years, and then all of a sudden you start having nerve problems. All of a sudden you start having kidney problems, and you are shocked as to why. But if you had known 10 years before that you had a bigger problem, then you wouldn't have needed to be shocked, because you could have prevented it, right? So our whole goal is helping you prevent these surprises by knowing ahead of time what is possible. We've developed a very wide spectrum of options for testing. We have what we call these full body panels, which is something that we recommend doing occasionally, once a year, every 6 months, which are comprehensive tests that test more than A1C. So all these that are called the metabolic tests or the full body tests, the whole goal is go beyond the A1C, and the core metabolic, complete metabolic, comprehensive metabolic, full body comprehensive, they all do the full 4-hour glucose tolerance test, which is what we recommend. If for some reason finances are a real concern, then we have this test called the essential metabolic test, which does a minimal glucose tolerance test, but at least you get something to detect what's happening. So all of these include some ability to go beyond the A1C, and takes you out of this statistic. So in other words, if you don't want to be part of the 73% of the people who think you're good but might not be, then any one of these tests are the labs that help you find that out. And again, this is not something you need to do every 6 months or even every 3 months. These are much more advanced tests. This you would do once a year. And then depending on what comes out of that test, then you would create a plan for what you would do next, depending. Everything comes out great, then it's like, well, I'm good. Maybe I don't even need to do one of these for another 5 years. But if things are more on the edge, then maybe you want to do it every few years. And if things are really more serious, then of course you'd want to do more tests. So part of it is balancing the amount of lab testing to your particular case. Again, going back to our goal of being personalized in terms of our approach to help you on that journey. So those are the labs for detecting diabetes. So again, this is, if you've never done any one of our labs, then one of these would be the first lab set to do to help detect if you have a problem or not, or how serious the problem is. If you have a pre-diabetes, find out if really maybe it's more serious than that. These are the labs to do the first time that you work with us. And really, I don't know of anyone else that's doing this kind of labs, so it's really work with us if you want these kind of labs. And once you've started the journey of, okay, I'm going to do these labs once, then there's a whole nother journey of, I have my initial baseline, I have my data that I did the first time, and now I'm going to do a monitoring to just keep up on a check, right? So this goes back to, again, what doctors typically do on a typically yearly physical. On a typically physical, you have an A1C, you have a lipid panel. they do kidney health, and then they do a partial kidney health. They do liver health, but they do a creatinine check on the kidney through a urine analysis, which is semi-useful, but it's not complete. And usually what happens is, unfortunately, people go to the doctor, they do these tests, and the doctor says, you're good, but they didn't test 20 other things that would have let them know that you're really not good. And so, unfortunately, it gives a false sense of security. It lets you think that things are good when they're not. And again, maybe we want to feel good, right? I mean, who doesn't want to feel good? Like, hey, I'm great. But if that's a false reality, if you know, if essentially a storm is coming, all these sad storms that recently have been happening, and you don't know about them, and you're just in your house thinking everything's fine because you didn't watch the news and you didn't listen to any reports, and you're kind of isolated and just haven't been paying attention, and you're just happy at home, and then all of a sudden a storm comes and takes your roof off. Well, that's something you could have prevented, right? If you had known, right? You could have evacuated, you could have put shutters up or whatever it is that different people need to do in different cases for storms. So the main goal is be informed and know ahead of time. So these tests are really completely insufficient. They're really very sad that this is all that's being done as a typical panel. And so at a typical yearly physical, you go with your doctor for 15 minutes. They kind of just basically say yes or no, you're good or not. They will do they will do an A1C, hopefully. Like I said, some doctors do, some doctors don't, but you can definitely get it if you request it. They will do a typical lipid panel, and they'll show you kind of some ratios, and then they'll do a liver health. And then again, like they said, they'll do a basic kidney creatinine test. That's part of your typical yearly physical. And so, in addition to the yearly physical, if anyone has diabetes or has diabetes in a family, or if you're in the list of people within the doctor's office that are for diabetes checkup, again, usually they will do an A1C every 6 months or every 3 months as part of like your standard monitoring, what the doctor's offices would call monitoring your diabetes, to just check to see everything's good. They'll essentially run one test. Maybe they'll rerun the lipids, but usually it's just once a year that they'll run that set of checks, and then the A1C is the only one that they'll run like every 3 months or every 6 months, depending on your scenario. So that's where we created what we call these monitoring packages. So the monitoring packages are things that you can do very frequently to the frequency that is appropriate for you. And they're designed to be very, very affordable so that you can keep doing them on a regular basis. And so what we call this essential monitoring package, the goal is to at least check your inflammation. And we'll talk about that in a minute, why that's important. The HSRP, your inflammation marker, we believe that should be checked every 3 months on anyone that has a risk of diabetes or has a risk of heart disease, has a risk of stroke, any family history in terms of cardiovascular issues. It's one of the key measures that really should be monitored, because again, that can change very quickly. Your inflammation marker can be good today, and in 3 months it could be very high. Why? Because you might have gotten an infection. Why? Because you might have had some issue with some insulin resistance that all of a sudden is showing up. You might have an issue with something else that's going on, a virus. There's many different factors of why and where that inflammation marker can increase. But essentially, it's something that should be monitored as part of a monitoring package, either every 6 months or every 3 months. If you are in a case of, I want to make sure everything's good because I'm in a higher risk group, right? The lipids would also be recommended to be run more frequently than every year. We've certainly had people who, within 3 to 6 months, all of a sudden had some dramatic increase in their cholesterol, or an increase in terms of the kidney. Again, that can change very fast. And some of the reasons why that can change, I'll share with you. So for example, excuse me, for some of the reasons that the kidney can change is you might be put on a new medication from your doctor. We've had people that their kidney was fine, their doctor changed their medicine, 3 months later, their kidney was 50% of what it used to be in 3 months. And that why? Because they just went on this new medicine the doctor put them on and wasn't monitoring their kidney. And if your doctor is like the typical medical system, they wouldn't have checked your kidney for a year, and then all of a sudden, a year later, you're in real serious problems because you've been taking this medicine now for 12 months, right? So, but find out about it within 3 months if there is a problem. And many medicines affect the kidney seriously, and especially if your kidney is not like in perfect function, it's something that would be recommended to be monitoring very, very frequently, at least every 3 months. Liver enzymes, we've definitely also seen people within 6 months, their liver enzymes become really high because they have some toxins, some kind of inflammation, some kind of infection. And you want to know that because then you can take measures to improve it. And these are all non-symptomatic problems. In other words, you will not typically feel anything different if your liver's enzymes are high. You will typically not feel anything different if your kidney is going from 90% to 60%. You will most likely never know unless you test. So the whole point of having these much more frequent tests is don't let things get out of hand. Find out about any issues early on so you can really figure out what's happening. So even our most basic essential monitoring package is designed to do more than your typical yearly physical. That's the whole point. And so more than once a year, you can very affordably do like regular monitoring every 6 months, every 3 months, or whatever is appropriate in your case. And I'll show you a graph of how we suggest the different monitoring schedules based on your particular scenario in a few minutes. And then if you want to do more advanced monitoring, and again, this depends on your particular case. Let's say you already have diabetes in the 8, 6, 7, 8 range. Maybe you are on insulin. If you have a more complex situation, maybe you already know you have had a stroke, or you've had high risk of strokes, or maybe there's some other reasons why you want to be much more careful and thorough. Then that's where these core monitoring, complete monitoring, or comprehensive monitoring are appropriate depending on your particular case. So as I mentioned, we recommend the regular monitoring on a very frequent level. So the glucose tolerance, especially if you did not do well on the first one, would be something that we would recommend regular repeats, even if it's once a year. Once a year is better than once every 5 years, right? So part of the goal is if you're going to do a glucose tolerance test, which is definitely fairly involved and it takes a lot of time, and definitely is not a simple test to do in terms of your time and energy and going to the lab. It's just a very complex test. But we're here to help you. That's why we're here, right? So we don't leave you on your own. We support you along the journey of doing this test. But even with our support, some people might not need to do it every 3 months or every 6 months. So that would be something at regular intervals, but that regular interval can be every year. And then the monitoring labs is where we recommend doing them frequently, every 6 months, every 3 months, depending on your particular case. So I talked about a chart, a graph that guides us and guiding you as to who should have what test when. And essentially, this is just a piece of it. We have a much more advanced and in-depth document that kind of guides us in terms of guiding you. But just to give you an idea of how we personalize the recommendations for every single person. No two people are the same. And this is one example of a comparison of 4 parameters. Are you using insulin? What's your A1C? What's your insulin resistance stage? And what's your pancreas health stage? So and we have a lot more parameters we monitor, but just as an example of 4 different variables in your particular health situation, which would depend, which would suggest different monitoring schedules based on those 4 variables. So as an example, someone who is using insulin, whose A1C is above 9, who's has an insulin resistance stage of 9, and I haven't really talked about the insulin resistance stages, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but just know that higher is worse, and it's something we measure during our glucose tolerance testing. And the pancreas health stage, the same thing, the higher the number, the worse the scenario. So this rightmost column is someone who's has a lot of complications in many different areas. Like all these 4 parameters are very risky, very serious. And so for that person, a comprehensive monitoring package every 3 months would be appropriate, because there's just a lot of different factors that are in the danger zone and would want to be very closely monitoring what's happening. It's almost just like you go to a hospital, right? You know, there's the hospital intensive care unit, and there's the hospital regular unit, and then there's the people that don't even get in the hospital and they're waiting in the waiting room, which is terrible, but it happens. And it's because the nurses thought that they were not serious enough to even be in the hospital waiting beds yet. And then there's people who are in the hospital, and then there's intensive care, and then there's the high intensive care. So just like different levels of seriousness require different levels of monitoring inside a hospital, same thing. If you're out and about in your life, but you're in a very critical state, then it's really important to be monitoring very frequently a wide number of measures, because any one of them could change and are important. On the other hand, let's say you're not using insulin, your A1C is below 5.3, you have a reasonably good insulin resistance stage, so you're below 3, your pancreas is in good shape, so it's stage 1 or 2, then you would essentially only monitor what's out of range, if anything. So if you didn't have anything out of range, you'd only monitor that particular element every 6 months. And then you'd only need to do every year, every 2 years, one of the core packages. And essentially these full body tests are to be done once first. Like in your lifetime, you should do one of them once. And then that'll tell you what you would need to keep repeating. And so, but things do change. So at a minimum, we would say once. And then based on that, typically there would be guidance in terms of, well, everything's great, let me just check in 5 years. But for other people, right? So then it'd be every year or yeah. So essentially, depending on how complicated your situation is, would be the recommendation on how frequent to run either the more complete panels or to run the monitoring panels. But you don't need to figure all this out. We take care of it. I'm just showing you all that goes behind the scenes on helping you become the best health you can. We do a lot of work to personalize things and to give you appropriate recommendations. We don't just tell everyone, take all the tests you can. Obviously, there's a financial justification that you need to make to yourself, and then there's also time and effort and going into labs and the reviews. So the goal isn't everyone should get all the tests. The goal is appropriate tests for your particular case, and we can help you find out what those are. And I'm happy to talk to any one of you who is interested, and that's all part of our journey in supporting you on that. So if you're here, you're probably interested in getting your diabetes either reversed or improved. I assume that's why you're here, or you want to make sure it doesn't get worse. And so part of the question, if you're new to E4 and this whole journey, is the question to yourself of, you know, is all hope lost? Can diabetes be reversed at all? And so we have had many hundreds of people go through our program. We have a lot of lab results to show the improvement. This is just one particular controlled study we did of 16 people going from beginning to end of a particular period of time to show the difference in results of the before and after. And as you can see, that we have had great success in people coming into our program, and 67% were able to get to the point of reversing diabetes out of that group that came into the program. And that included reducing medicines or reducing insulin. So our goal is to help you reduce insulin and reduce medicines. It would not be called reversing diabetes if you just took more insulin. That would just be managing your diabetes and keeping the A1C low, which is what is the standard of care in the standard doctor world. And so any one of these results are all within the framework of less medicines and less insulin. And that's part of our goal, is minimize the amount of extra medicines you need. Now, that's not to say that some people that don't have insulin might need insulin. We've discovered that too. And so there's certainly people who are not taking insulin who could benefit from insulin. And we are about appropriate use of different medicines depending on your particular case. And so if you can get off of the medicines because you're able to improve your lifestyle and improve your diet and improve your eating and improve all the areas that we help you with, then much the better. But some people have a very unique case. Their pancreas might not be working fine, or they might not be able to do some lifestyle changes because of different factors in their current environment. And so then there's a mix. There's a mix of what you might need to do in terms of medicines and in terms of that whole approach. So comparing lifestyle to metformin and comparing the idea that if I can't reverse it, then I should just give up and not do anything, right? So even when you can't fully reverse diabetes, improving your health to lower your A1C below 7, like we talked about, is priority number one. And if you can do that with lifestyle, you're going to get the most health benefits. And so 80% of the people came into the program were able to get their A1C below 7. Again, this is with less medicine, with less insulin. The goal is improve your lifestyle, improve your health, and focus on that as the solution. If you just focus on taking a pill, it improves the number, but it doesn't actually improve your health as much as you would think. So just remember that lowering the A1C, but increasing insulin, for example, can be something that lowers the number. The doctor is happy, hey, I got your A1C below 7, but now you're on 50 or 100 units of insulin, and that has its own separate risks. Or maybe the doctor has prescribed glyphosate or one of the medicines that can lower your A1C, but has very high risks in terms of complications. And many people right now are in this fad of Ozempic and Wegovy, and sure, it can help with reducing appetite and it can help with reducing the A1C, but there's a long list of complications that come with that. So there's always a trade-off in terms of, shall you do it with a pill or shall you do it with lifestyle? If you can achieve the same result with lifestyle versus a pill, you're always going to get better health benefits with lifestyle than choosing a pill, because the pill just lowers the marker. It doesn't necessarily solve the underlying problem. It's sort of like you're in a car and your check engine light comes on, and you can essentially tape over it with a pill, what many times happens, but your engine's still not working. It's just you don't know it, or the signal looks good, but in reality, it's not really working. So you would be best served for your long-term health, focusing on lifestyle as the main option. Of course, sometimes medicines are needed, they're complementary. We're not against medicines. What we just want to make people aware of is that using a pill as the only solution is definitely not the optimum path to long, healthy lives. So metformin, again, is one of the medicines that pretty much all doctors start people with diabetes on, and it pretty much on average drops the A1C by 0.5. But if you take a really comprehensive approach to lowering diabetes through lifestyle, like we do in our program, you can drop your A1C by 1.5 points or more. So you have more powerful results than taking a pill, and you have better health outcomes because metformin does not improve the overall final health outcome, even though it lowers your insulin resistance. If you're lowering your A1C with metformin, but you're still eating a very risky diet in terms of heart disease, the metformin is not going to reduce your heart disease risk. It's just going to lower the A1C, but your heart disease risk because of the diet is still going to be very high. So the second question is, how low can the A1C go? It depends, again, on your particular case. This is where that glucose tolerance test with our advanced analysis really helps, because we can check whether your pancreas is working well or not. If your pancreas is working well, it is absolutely possible to lower the A1C back into the optimum range. We've had people come in at a 10, A1C of 10, and get their A1C down into the 5s. So it is absolutely possible, but you would need to understand what your case is. Some people have a pancreas that's working really well. Some people have a pancreas that's not working that well, and then it's much harder. So, as an example, just of some examples of people who've gone through our program and have seen the changes. This was one of the first participants from a while back in the program, and again, her A1C came in at 9.1. Her pancreas was actually having some challenges in terms of it not fully producing insulin, but because of the combination of the diet and the exercise and the meal timing and everything that we do, and show you more details later on how we do it, she was able to get A1C down to 5.3. So 9.1 to 5.3, like I said, it is absolutely possible. It's certainly something that can be done in certain cases, not in every case. Everyone's different, but that's what the labs help us understand. In terms of kidney disease, and there's a video that you're welcome to watch of each of these case studies on our website. Kathy has 20 minutes on our website sharing her full story. All of these people have been graciously willing to share their story with you, so you get inspired about what's possible. We thank each of them, and so she had diabetes for 37 years and was on the kidney transplant list, but she managed to reverse her diabetes to the point where she was on like 100 units of insulin. She got almost off all the insulin, and she got off the kidney transplant list. Her kidney function improved to the point where she didn't need to be on the kidney transplant list. So as amazing as our new technology, health medical technology, is to be able to do a kidney transplant and save lives, that's miraculous compared to 30, 40 years ago, what was possible. What if you didn't need to wait for a miracle, right? What if you didn't need to wait 5 years to get that kidney transplant, or to go through all the challenges of it happening, and the insulin, the immune, once you get a transplant, it's a very, very complicated situation. It can save your life, and if you need it, then you need it, and absolutely do it. But what if you didn't need it, right? What if you could avoid going through that whole hassle, and what if you could improve your health such that you didn't need it? That was Kathy's case, and we're so excited that was able to happen for her. And one of her passions was actually with aerobics, and she wasn't able to do that before. She was then able to do that later in her journey, so that was really exciting. Another participant who came in again at a very, very low kidney stage, and had a lot of challenges with her health, and she was able to go from 60 units of insulin back down to a more like, this is a case of a person who needs insulin, needed it, still needs it, but has dropped it from a very high dose of insulin that was actually causing weight gain and causing complications to a very low dose, because she improved her lifestyle such that she did not need as much. That's really part of the goal. And then one of our coaches today, she's now a coach with the E4 program. She helps all of you who, if any of you are interested in joining the program, she would be one of the people in the program that can help you on that journey. And she was a case of, her doctor had never told her. She never had done any A1C. She had never told her what was happening. And as soon as she had our test, she was really shocked to discover she was not in as good health as she thought she was. She did the whole program, and in 8 months, she went from a high A1C to an A1C of 5.4 and lost a fair amount of weight. And so there's definitely lots and lots of successes depending on where you're at in the journey, different scenarios. So part of the goal is for us to be able to support you on the journey. And we've created this 5-step approach. We have first analysis. Analysis is the foundation of learning how we can help you because everyone's different. So the whole labs we just talked about, the whole analysis, that's really critical in terms of being able to keep doing that. We have the idea of learning, because once you know what the problem is, then your next obvious question is going to be, how do I improve it? We have a whole series of online courses with very specific modules to help you along each step of the journey. And as part of our program on the implementation side, we have 3 meetings a week where we have very small groups and we limit the group size so that you can get individual care during those group sessions. And then we help you one-on-one. If you choose one-on-one support or within that small group setting, you can get the support in terms of implementing those paths of health into your own life. And then we do another check, right? So the whole circle of analyze, learn, implement, and then validate means recheck 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year down the road. How are you doing on the journey? And then help keep optimizing, because it's a life doesn't start and end in 1 year, right? We continue living. Our environment keeps on changing, and if we improved 10% this year, maybe next year we can improve another 10%. And if maybe COVID came and all of a sudden we went backwards, then let's not keep going backwards. Let's stop going backwards and let's shift things to improve. Or maybe we had a family member who became ill and we weren't able to take care of ourselves and eat as well as we should have. Maybe financial situation changed and you weren't able to get as good food, or maybe you were super stressed at your job because they added a whole bunch of extra work for you and you no longer go and walk out. Whatever the reason, life changes, things can go backwards, or they can stay the same, or they can keep improving. So our goal is keep improving all the time, never go backwards. And if you do go backwards for whatever reason, because life throws stuff at you, then don't keep going backwards. And it's sort of like you're swimming upstream on a river of health, right? If we want to reach this healthy centenarian goal, we are swimming upstream on a river that is moving us down a path of worsening health as we age. That's just normal life on this planet, right? Our body keeps wearing down over time, and that's what's normal. And if we just stay on that river and keep going downstream, we're going to end up, at our 60s or 70s in a very bad spot, which is unfortunately how most people in the US and in the world are ending up. But if you want to keep your health in good shape in your hundreds, you need to be swimming upstream every single day and improving. Like, you can't just let the current take you down. You have to really be swimming. So if you stop swimming, then you're going to be going backwards because life goes backward. Life is pushing us that way, right? So the normal progression of health as we age is things go backward. And if you stay still and do nothing, you're going to go backward, because that's just normal of life, of our life cycle. So if you want to be moving forward, the only way is to keep swimming and stronger than if you stay still. Like, you have to swim to stay still. If you want to keep your health stable, you have to swim. You can't just do nothing, because then you're going to go backwards. So part of our first goal is don't let you go backwards, right? So our goal number 1 is don't go backwards, at least stay as well as you are now. And our second goal is help you improve to even get better. And so that's this whole cycle. That's part of our journey in our program. So I just kind of went through this: analyze, learn, implement, validate, and then keep evolving. And there's really 2 paths. We recommend the left path. We recommend you start with labs, because then you really know where you're at. So if anyone's new to E4 and to this whole journey, we recommend that you start with labs and understand where you're at. Now, some people are exceptionally lucky in that they have some very specialized doctors that they've already been working with, and you already have a lot of labs. Maybe you've been working with a functional medicine doctor, maybe you've been working with some other way of getting a lot of labs. So if you already have a good picture of your health and you've done glucose tolerance tests and you've done a lot of these labs, we can absolutely use the labs you already have and you can go straight into the program. But if you're missing some critical labs, we would strongly recommend that you first do the labs, because then we can know how to help you better. And so we're inviting you to, if you're not part of our program, to take the invitation and take the journey to do some labs. Again, we have very, very affordable monitoring labs. We have the labs to get started all the way from the essential to the more comprehensive. We have a really, really wide range of options in terms of getting your health checked out. And so we invite you to do the labs. Included in that whole lab package is a whole set of videos about learning what the labs do and learning about the options. So that's all part of the package. It's not just, hey, go to the lab and you'll get an email report. It's really go to the labs and we will walk you through the next steps individually as to what the journey is, explain what you're at. We additionally also look at 2 years of your history labs. So just doing one set of labs with us gets you a 3-year analysis essentially, because you do labs now, and we look at 2 years of prior history. We build a whole report and a whole graph. We do a lot of work to really help you gain full insight into your health. Probably more work than I've seen any other organization do in terms of helping you get clarity into where you're at. And we're really proud of the amount of focus and care we work with every one of the people who joins us, and you become one of the family of our passionate future centenarians that we want to have. So the next journey after labs would be then, if you choose to do something about it, that you need to, and if not, no, great. If you're in great shape and you don't need to do anything, then wonderful. If there are things to address, then we can help identify and create a custom program for you to address it. And then you can enjoy knowing that you're not falling behind like everyone else, and you're at least stable, if not improving your health. That's part of the end goal. And I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, so definitely, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and our team here will help triage them to make sure we get answers to you. If not now, certainly we'll send you answers via email. And so, like I said, invite you to start with the labs. Again, we work with Quest and LabCorp if needed, but Quest has been a good partner in terms of providing national support for doing labs pretty much almost anywhere in the country. And we can manage that. We'll coordinate everything for you, and you just work with us, and we'll take care of all the details to make sure everything is good. Again, just to repeat, for regular checkups, we have these monitoring labs. And then for the first time you're doing labs with us, you would do one of these more comprehensive metabolic panel labs, which includes the glucose tolerance test and the whole sequence. And then we have the page report, which really gives you insights into everything that's happening, and really here to answer your questions, and want to make sure that you have the best health possible. And like I said, we have to swim to not fall behind. And so whether it's with us or whether it's on your own or however you do it, just remember it takes effort to not fall behind. And as we pass our 50s, it used to be 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that the amount of people that lived beyond 50 was not that great, not that many. And the modern technology that we have today with health has really allowed us to go into the 80s, 90s, 100s. The problem is that if you follow the standard process, you will be alive, but not fully living. And so that's why we actually call our program the A.L.I.VE program. We want you to be alive, not just sitting in a wheelchair, not being able to really do anything. We want healthy, vibrant, alive people in their hundreds, enjoying life, traveling, and doing stuff. And actually, that was one of my biggest inspirations. Was I think I told this a few times, but if you haven't heard, I was on a river rafting trip where I was able to see a 98-year-old woman hiking faster than I was up a mountain and up a hill, and we were going up some we were on a 2-week trip down the Klamath River in Oregon, and we were hiking up some waterfalls, and so it was just inspiring to me. Say, I want to be, when I'm 98, I want to be hiking and vibrant like that person, and I think you can too. And we have that vision for every single person to be healthy and vibrant into their hundreds, and that's the goal of us doing all these labs and helping you on the journey, is really helping you reach that and know what you need to do so you don't fall behind, and so you keep at least maintaining, and if not, improving your health. And it's certainly possible. We've had people come in at 60 and improve their health better than they were in their 50s. And so it's absolutely possible to improve your health, and it's certainly possible to not let it get worse. So we invite you to think about that possibility, and really thanks for joining us. I'm looking here at the chat. So I must have been perfectly clear, or maybe everyone's asleep. So hopefully not everyone's asleep. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. If there's no other questions, we'll make this all available as part of our recording, and you can send your questions via email. That's part of our goal, is to really support you on the journey. And if you haven't done any of these labs, we strongly encourage you to do some labs. The labs that the doctors are currently doing are completely insufficient to give a clear picture of our health. And if you do already have diabetes, at least do the monitoring labs to check how you are, depending on what your stage is. And if you're not sure what to do, send our team a message, and I'm happy to meet individually at a free consultation with any one of you to review what is appropriate and give you guidance in terms of next steps. That's part of our journey here, to really support all of you on this journey. So I think we're going over time. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I think we'll let all of you continue on your Saturday afternoon, and really appreciate all of you who took your time to join us live and to listen to this journey, this idea of the labs. And again, if you have any questions that you want to ask privately, maybe you don't want to ask them in a public forum, send us a message. I'm happy to meet with any one of you one-on-one and answer any questions. You can also answer questions via email. So we're here for you. That's the purpose of our journey here at E4 Diabetes Solutions, is to support you on that whole journey and be here for your health. So barring no further questions, we will let all of you continue on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and hopefully you are able to keep swimming, keep improving, and that's our goal and our vision for all of you. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and talk to you soon.